Aron, welcome back to the show.
Thank you, Max. Good to see you.
Good to see you too. I missed you guys at the close of the Bubble Tour, triumphant tour ending run at Sayreville, the big return.
And you were missed.
This has been a tough year for me and Biscuits tour. I had to miss a lot of shows because of the fire.
Fair.
Then I went to Denver and got norovirus. We won't talk about that anymore.
Did not know that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Fun.
No, not fun.
Not fun. Right.
And then I was hoping that I would be able to make it out to Sayreville because I have just been hearing people talk about the debauchery of Sayreville for decades now. And I've never experienced it myself. But I was able to watch the shows on Nugs. And wow, you guys, you tore the building down.
It lived up to the Slayerville expectations, Max.
It was hot. The energy that second night, especially, people were coming out of it saying like that was an all-timer.
It was hot. It was confident. It was cocky, if you will. Yeah. Exploratory. Definitely like new things that happened at the end of tour. New song, end of tour. Like, my favorite new song, right? All of them get to be my favorite new song. And then
this one in particular, this one is really good.
It's triumphant, right? And don't we need more triumphant anthems in life to get us through this life? Don't we need triumphant anthems to trumpet us to the next day?
Yeah. We're talking, of course, about Scars of the Brave, which I'm hoping that in the near future we'll have a full episode that we could dedicate to it. But wow, that song, well, we first heard it at the BARBER and Magner, mostly acoustic shows on March 8th. Sorry, on March 7th. You played the ending of Spy and segued into Scars of the Brave.
That is also cocky.
Yeah.
We also its official debut actually was in a VIP set. We were like kind of excited. It was not ready for prime time yet, but the only way to get it into prime time is to test it out on stage and then eventually, put people in front of you, because that's the last ingredient, I think, of any, performance song, whatever. You need to feel that completed energy. And so, yeah, I guess we were excited after that VIP thing. I didn't realize, I forgot until now that we played it at the acoustic show. We were also just as excited to get it out. And then we finally got it out at Sayreville. Amazing.
So you did it at the acoustic show. And it's really interesting because it translated beautifully to an acoustic rendition. But it's a song that has a sample as sort of part of its DNA.
That sample, it's just like a public right, sample, right? And it has a definitive melody to it that fits beautifully with how the song is kind of formed, right? I don't think it's necessarily formed around it. It just complements it perfectly. And so it's kind of needed. It's just like, that melody at the very least is needed. So I just took it on piano.
Speaking of these license-free vocal samples that you've been incorporating into the songs lately, represents another evolution in your use of samples. So first it was the spoken word, then it was more recognizable classics, then it was some more contemporary pop songs. And on the Bubble Tour, you started experimenting with more sort of abstract, just vocal tones, moans, just beautiful female vocal sounds that you would be layering into the jams and that would inspire some really beautiful improvisation. How did you find yourself going in that direction?
So there was points in jams in like the summertime, for instance, right, where John would be like, oh, this would be great to have like a female vocal, a high, female vocal. And like sometimes I am like, oh, I have this thing, it's in A minor, and could kind of like search for it. But if you make that more expansive, right, where it's like not derived from a song, it's not extracted from a song, it's not like, say the Blondie sample that I did the other night, right? Yeah. That, I extracted from the physical song, I had it labeled in my catalog, Blondie Rapture E minor, right? And we were in whatever jam we were in E minor, and it was wide open, and I was like, oh, I would love I thought to myself, I would love a female vocal melody here, right? And I was searching for one of these, like, public rights or whatever it's called. Not what'd you call it before? What are they called? Public domain,
splice sample, public domain.
Splice samples, little female like loops and clips. And so as I was looking for that, I found the Blondie Rapture, and I was like, oh, that's an E minor, and boom, just went for it. It's like, feels about right. Don't know what it's going to sound like. Hadn't been able to sing it in my head yet, and just went for it. And it was perfect for that moment. Again, if you like zoom out even bigger than that, just any sort of like that, it's that tone that I think that jam was kind of calling for. It needs something organic. And that female tone, that female vocal tone, which the Biscuits don't frequently have, aside from when we've had female guests with us or on albums. So it's just this sound bath, of the feminine, just like coming over the jam. It's great.
And it laid up some really beautiful, as I said, improvisation. I'm thinking specifically, didn't anticipate doing this early, but I just happened to have a clip. The photograph at Sayreville.
Okay.
And it's a minute before we get there, but we could talk and have it play in the background a little bit.
Let's talk and it'll be background, yeah.
You get a great example of you layering in one of these nonverbal vocal samples that turns the jam into something that it wasn't previously. It's a very exciting new development in how you're bringing in outside sounds to your repertoire. So, we haven't talked since, I don't know, you haven't been on the podcast since like last fall, I think, when we talked about Tractor Beam. So we've been through like 6 more evolutions of the band since then.
Totally.
The whole West Coast tour. Remember the West Coast tour? That was a thing. Likewise. But, you did these 8 shows on the East Coast to close things out before you've got a considerable break coming up. With the knowledge that you're going to be off the road for a while, that you're heading back to the studio, that you've got this big run of shows on the West Coast, very triumphant culmination at the Mission in Denver. What was the approach going into these last 8 shows? You're hitting the key East Coast markets, you're close to home, you're going to places like Sayreville where the energy is going to be off the charts. Was there any kind of underarching philosophy or intention going into this last run?
I mean, now that you phrase it like that and are, fishing for an answer, I think it is kind of the culmination of everything that we've been kind of scratching at and improving upon and evolving upon. And now, like, we've come upon this potential, that like is infinite. We have the ability to, write songs that we really like, and we could kind of like write them fast and get them to stage, reasonably fast, and then get them into a studio, as fast as we can. I literally came back today from doing vocals from a new studio session that we did just a couple of weeks ago. So like things are moving, right? And we're seeing like repeatable patterns in what we're doing that's working, and what you're seeing at the end of tour is those repeatable patterns that have been refined and edited and still excitable. That's the coolest part, right? Like, you don't get to push an envelope, if you will, of art unless you're excited about it. You could go back and critique it later for sure, but in the moment you have to be excited about it. And I think we all still are, individually and collectively. So that's what you're hearing at the end of tour, folks.
There's a fun element too. I feel like anytime you guys go out west, you bring something new back for the folks at home.
It's different out west, for sure. We take a little bit from the West Coast because it's different, right? We play differently out there because it is different. The fans are different, the vibe is different, the countryside is different. I mean, on the inside, we're same, right? Obviously. And then we bring back some of that to the East Coast with us and spread those posy California vibes to us sardonic East Coast fucks.
Well, this time, one of the things you brought back was, of course, Postcard. And Postcard underwent some changes in its last performance. I was told by someone that the set list said new Postcard, but there was definitely something new about Postcard, whether or not it's an official new version.
100%. We're kind of going backwards to the DNA of the demo form of it, right? We've talked, I'm sure, at many points on this podcast about demo love, where you're just, addicted to the demo and anything else that you try is just never as good as the demo. That's not necessarily what this is. There's just a purity in that demo because it was only supposed to inform what the essence of the song is. And so we kind of like went back to that demo to inform us what the essence of the song is, and then try and translate that through our instruments ourselves. Not necessarily, enhancing the lines immensely, but doing something to translate even the little things that are noticed. Like, Barber pointed out this was something in Scars of the Brave, but he was like, after this drop, we're basically going back to the same exact loop, but like something kind of like picks up in intensity right at this moment. And we were able to like pinpoint that it was the low end of the keyboard on that sound suddenly like comes in on that octave. And that's what gives it its little bit of lift there. Right. So kind of analyzing little things like that, going back to, again, the demo and Postcard, and finding cool things that are translating. Simplicity sometimes is what we're figuring out again and again. Keep it simple, stupid, right? Oh, here it is.
Perfect timing. You hit the post on that.
Yeah, it's a vibe, right? Now, here's my question.
Yes.
How long do you stay in vibe for? Because I have a feeling this vibe feels good right now in the room, right?
Yeah.
Still feels good on the ears. Pretty soon, I'm going to be like, okay, what's coming next? But I have a feeling we probably stick in this for a little bit of time, going, okay, this is cool. What now? Right? And sometimes there's not anything to do other than be like, all right, let's ride this wave. There you go. Somebody's changing. bells coming in? What's that? Uh-huh. Into Orc.
Yeah.
Heard it was a long time since we played our last Orc.
Yeah. Well, that's the upside or downside of this incredibly huge rotation that you have right now, is that you can be chasing what used to be a fairly common song like an Orc now for an entire tour.
Yeah.
Because there are so many shows, so many songs that are in contention to take up those slots every night. And plus you're playing shows like the 14th at the Starland Ballroom where you're effectively playing 3-song sets. You played 2 3-song sets that night.
It's so weird. Like if I knew in advance that that was going to be the plan, I would be like, no, that's no, like we have to have more songs, at least have some alternates ready if we need more, and I didn't even know until you just told me that they were 2 3-song sets. Really?
Yeah. Well, Confrontation bookended and Basis bookended. So we're counting those once.
Uh-huh.
I mean, I think you had a Lunar Pursuit and a Svengali in the set list as well, but those are getting dropped when you come out the gate with that huge Confrontation with the total eclipse of the heart.
Right.
And then in the second set, the Basis into Buddha, you drew out the introduction to Buddha. I mean, it was the most deliciously tantric transition and
cocky. That's
exactly.
That's the cocky I'm talking about.
You're doing
egregious, arguably egregious, right?
The Disco Biscuits in 2025 are the first 2 songs of any set are 55 minutes to an hour and 10 minutes. And then you have the next 20 minutes to play the rest of your intended set.
Oh, definitely. Believe me, I feel that shot clock when it comes time, man. Brownson has us on a fucking clock. You know, you can't mess with the system. He's got it down.
He does. And it's working.
Yeah, for sure. That's crazy though. Listen, man, I fucking challenge you other jam bands, a challenge. This is officially challenge you other jam bands to play as long and jammy jams as we're jamming right now, and in quality jam. Quality.
It has to be good. It can't just be some crap.
It's true. I just have a preconceived notion that when another band like plays a fucking like 1-song 50-minute set that
that's
like
garbage.
Half of it is crap or all of it is crap except for like the beginning or the end, right? I mean, is this the Biscuit fan thing you were talking about? It totally is.
Some other highlights from the last few nights. I'm kind of jumping all over, but Under Your Spell got that new part that BARBER had been alluding to, and it slayed.
I also want a pen so I can make points here like that. That seems pretty, yes. I'm not sure what we're going to, but if you'll take it right, I'm riding with you. I'm not sure what to say. I'm not sure what it's going to, but if you'll take it right, I'm riding with you. I'm not sure what to say. It did slay, and it felt good, man, and that's the reason that like we do this day in and day out, for the song's purpose and perspective, right? It's so that these songs can grow and mature and evolve and eventually like reach some potential where you're like, yep, you've arrived. Welcome to the catalog, Under Your Spell, Yep. Welcome to the family. You're going to be welcome here, for a long time.
And a really cool thing happened in Delaware where you played that new version or expanded version of Under Your Spell. It came out of Freeze. And in the internal Freeze jam, I lost my mind during this. I texted you guys right after the show demanding an explanation.
Right.
I couldn't tell. I was like, is this Scars of the Brave? Are you doing, is this a new song? What's going on? And Brownstein explained to me that it had to do with trying to play around with the changes of Under Your Spell, but you did something else and BARBER did something else. And you kind of created this beautiful, airy jam in that middle Freeze slot.
Well, cool, because I sort of remember that cool things happened in Delaware, but have no recollection of what you are talking about. So here we go.
Yes, the Delaware show, you guys came out, you did a beautiful fiddler, and then it was the Mulberries Abyss Mulberries, which really got everybody excited. I mean, the jam from Mulberries into Abyss, definitely a contender. But this Freeze jam was so pretty and so, it sounded so intentional. And I guess Brownstein had something in mind and you guys all just jumped on board and did your thing.
Yeah, I do recall there was something like we had an intention going into the jam that was like briefly mentioned backstage, but then that just like wasn't the moment that we were in. So we like decided to pursue the moment that we were in, which is definitely the yes and thing to do, right? As opposed to trying to like force a concept that we briefly talked about. The part you're referring to? Are we starting to establish it here? Got it. Getting our inner Sector 9 in, huh? I love that. I love sounding like, I think we sound like Sector 9 for a brief moment, you know? I do. I think we sound like New Deal for a brief moment, you know?
You love your New Deal teases.
Listen, man, they come organically. I'm not trying to force them. They're just like simple little 3-note melodies that are just fucking part of my DNA now. Thank you, Jamie.
So your piano part here is really what jumped out at me.
Okay.
What am I hearing? It feels like it's on the tip of my tongue, like I know what this is. Not that it is anything. It has that quality of the first time you hear something, like you've been hearing it your whole life.
Anything specific? It has some qualities of like a Moby song, you know, has some qualities of Champions, you know, too, for sure.
Okay.
This is cool. A nice little bubble loop. Happy bubble loop.
Freeze has always been...
Oh, right, we're in freeze.
Yeah. Freeze has always been sort of one of those, like, no holds barred, anything goes jams. Like, there's no rules when you're in there. But this is a departure from even the typically creative Freeze jam, in that it's so comforting. You know, this is like the aliens are blasting everyone. They're turning people into frozen statues in Times Square. It's like
the aliens are blasting everyone. They're so happy in this version.
In this version, they're like around a campfire, like hugging each other.
Yeah, I have always had a desire for the Freeze jam to be that, like, I don't know whether dark and ominous is the word, but like, you know, think about the lyrics that you're foreboding, right? Yeah. The lyrics that are coming is like, take your positions, prepare the crystal, right? I always kind of thought that it should kind of follow this, like, spooky, what is going to happen, big energy, but like hasn't been materialized yet, you know? Because then it does materialize at the end chorus, you know? That's the last, like, of the freeze, right? Yes.
There's an aspect of this that reminds me, don't roll your eyes. Do you remember the dribble from December 30th, 1998 at Wetlands?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Good. Because I was going to feel like a real idiot if I brought that up and you were like, Max, I can't remember 5 minutes ago. But
there's some melodies, you know, that have passed the memory test over the years and would probably slip into our DNA to come out 30 years later without even realizing what it is. So I would be interested to know if that has ever come across organically, you know, in a solo or a jam or something like that. There's a lot of that stuff. The TLA from that year has a lot of memorable, you know, melodies.
Oh, yeah. Well, in this particular case, it's not so much that even that the melody has carried over, but the idea of a dribble jam, which is typically scary or sexy or slinky or dark. Yes. But that was the soaring, triumphant
one. And the
one
opposite happened.
It didn't have the hits in it. It was just the soaring, triumphant melody. And in this one, too, it's, you know, I'm about to get frozen. I know the crystal is coming, but right now it feels really good.
Right. It's this is the hedonistic jam before the crystal's power.
Yeah. The aliens are looking into the Nokia Theater at this point, and they're like, these people are having fun. We're going to wreck them.
But before we do, we can have some fun, too.
Exactly.
Laps, as we call them, as the kids call them these days. I don't know. Are the kids starting to call them laps? Is it part of jam band vernacular now?
We'll have to see. There you go. Now it's scary again. So the last song from the final run of shows that I want to ask about is The Return of Mirrors.
The Return of Mirrors.
Must have found the computer file that we were told was standing between us and getting our mirrors for all these years.
Who told you that?
Brownstein said something like, I think there's a computer file and we can't find, Magner lost it, or I lost it, or somebody lost it.
I typed into my computer mirrors and found mirrors stage bounce, and I was like, here we go.
That was it. It was as easy as just the command button and the space button and then typing MI, and it was right there.
And all the things that you think about, and all the thoughts that you never said out loud.
Well, how did it feel to bring back that song for the first time since, I believe, 2016?
It felt really good, man. I've always liked Mirrors. I've always liked the Red Rocks performance of Mirrors, which I know is a highly contested performance. Musically, aesthetically, I don't fucking know. I think it's fucking awesome and beautiful for a moment in time, and it was awesome to go back and revisit it and feel like we played it better, sang it better. Time heals all wounds, people, right? So Mirrors was welcomed back with a massive reception by everybody. Only positive vibes for Mirrors. I loved it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, people have been clamoring for it for the better part of a year.
Awesome.
When Brownstein came on Touchdowns All Day, and played the ukulele version, that definitely got it back into the discourse.
Your eyes are like my mirrors. When you let me stare into them, and if I look for long, it always seems that I find myself within your dreams.
There's been a thread on Fantasy Tour for the last few months with people saying how much they love the song and how much they'd love to hear it.
Right. No, it was great. We played it with confidence and excitement to bring it back out. And, we're able to achieve this feels really comfortable very quickly. And to achieve that pretty quickly after remembering how to play it and sound checking it led to a really awesome, opening of us then continuing that energy of that was really good, in sound check, and then forgetting, we were talking about earlier, that key component of needing audience to complete the energy of a song or a performance, whatever. That was it,
There's a lot of things from the band's history that you are now probably better equipped to do than ever before. Things that maybe got abandoned years ago because they just weren't working, or the technical effort or even the vocals were just not happening.
Right.
But the Disco Biscuits in 2025, this new cocky band that I see before me, the technology is working. The crew is there, the instrumentation, the vocals are happening. So it seems like there are things from the past, like a Mirrors.
I mean, we even have our own choreography, as was seen at that Boston show,
So I'm curious to see what comes next. What other thing from the past? I think it's time for Strawberry Girl to come back. I'm going to put it out there.
Okay.
There are lots of things from the past that the 2025 Disco Biscuits, I think, can do justice to.
I'll tell you what the next thing is. And now that I know that the way to get one of these songs back is to sneak it in on ukulele, I think that I have revisited Ida Fifth.
You know that that's
well,
me.
I was hoping that I'd be able to come on the podcast and be like, Max, you got your Ida Fifth, right? No. But we didn't get to it yet. I'm hoping to get to it. It's a fun little ditty of a song, at a early stage of a prolific songwriter's career. Right. And I think that it's kind of like cool looking at it from that perspective, in the same way that, go back and you listen to any prolific songwriters and the beginning of their career, or prolific bands in the beginning of their career. It's almost like it's a little cute, that's not the best word, because I don't want to belittle it to anything. But you could see the innocence, in that song, right? And I guess if what we're always chasing is purity of intention and stuff like that, right, is what we really relate well to in an artist. It's right there when you listen to a song like Ida Fifth, and that's what I attach to when I re-listen to it. Understandably, John probably attaches differently to a very formative stage in his songwriting career. And so that is the current conversation. And I don't think he's not into it. I think there's just more important things to do right now than to relearn Ida Fifth, which, fair.
Well, my attachment to it is because one of the two times it was played was at my first show. And as someone who...
One of the two. How fun is that?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And as someone who had never heard the Disco Biscuits before, everything that you played that night, which, if you recall, Aaron, I enjoyed that show from the sidewalk because they wouldn't let us in because we were underage.
I do not recall, Max.
Okay. Well, you really should know your Max Dawson history a lot better. I'm going to quiz you later.
Okay. Fair.
I've always had this fondness for that song. And when you say the purity of it, we were all pure back then. What's more pure than a floppy-haired guy subsisting on ramen noodles, walking around in a circle on a track, writing a song about love?
Yeah. Right?
As we approach our 50s, or some of us have already entered our 50s, thinking about an Ida Fifth, there's something so beautiful about it.
Yeah. Yeah. As we're approaching our adult contemporary years, is that what you're inferring? Got it. Okay.
Exactly.
Listen, I am going to embrace my adult contemporary years with chords made up of major sevens and nines and, Michael McDonald harmonies.
I was just going to say, you're Michael McDonald there. You little salt and pepper.
There was, so we were doing vocals in the studio this week, and every time I would go in for my harmony parts, right, I had that image of that SCTV skit where Michael McDonald played by Rick Moranis, where he runs into the studio, he sings his high line real quickly, he runs out, he goes to get paid, they show him the contract, and he's like, oh, fine, I'll go in. The song is still playing. Meanwhile, he goes in, he hits the second chorus as was obligated in the contract that was just pointed out, runs out. He had parked in a handicap spot, so he was looking at his watch, got there time in 2 minutes, goes to another studio. That's sort of what it felt like. We were just it wasn't obviously rushed, but we were definitely on a cycle of just cool, song, again, these repeatable patterns, right? We found a studio that we really like, that we can go and we can immerse ourselves in a retreat like atmosphere, and we stay and we eat together, and we say goodnight, and go and go to our individual rooms and go out, then eat breakfast in the morning together, right? So we're a unit. We never really like deviate from that unit, and there's no new energy that is, coming into that, right? And then the next morning we go back out and we go back into the studio in the back and we break for lunch and we all come back out for lunch, right? So it's this repeatable pattern of we had a really successful time there the first time. Now we want to repeat it. And now we have, good quality studio recordings of these songs, which we now start to put on the conveyor belt, and we do some vocal singing, and then we start to put all the ingredients, back together and see what we kind of have and see whether we want, producers' fingerprints on it and everything like that. So all these things will be, the next steps in 2025. And that's fucking awesome.
Well, thank you for bringing up the studio work and your vocal stylings. I've been getting a steady stream of videos from Coach Joey.
Oh, gosh.
Of you in the booth and John in the booth.
Uh-huh.
And Aron, I am blown away by how good some of your harmonies have been on, I think it was No Recollection. No Recollection and Scars. The vocals sound so good in the studio.
Fun.
Great. Well, thank you, Max. Well, thank you.
And you and John both do funny hand things while you sing in the booth. It's hilarious.
You taught me all your lessons. I'll teach you mine. You can find the time. We can find the time. And will you get the message? I'll see you try. You can find the time.
We have Michael Jordan face, but with hands and stuff like that.
John does a lot of hand action.
You shouldn't call me a hero. Is this the end of our story? Is this the end of the line? I wish I had a moment to cry, but the phone keeps ringing.
Interesting. I think for me, I definitely notice that I'm doing hand stuff that I wouldn't normally otherwise. I think it helps me to control syllables and breaths with more deliberately and focused than I really ever would, because I'm always usually playing this keyboard over here and listening to, 3 other people and looking at the crowd and singing my part and hoping I get to my note, right? When you're in a studio, you're like, this is my note. This is my job, It was awesome. We came in focused on a schedule every day. We clocked in, we clocked out. It really, I even said like the first day, I was like, what an awesome place to go to work. It was just like, cool, right? Like, had something I definitively needed to do, like work, but it's in a fucking studio going, I store my memories,
How much progress have you guys made toward the completion of this album? I guess what I'm fishing for is, do you have a timeline in mind when you'd like to see this come out into the world?
No, it's way too early. I even second guessed myself as I was like revealing that this is, what we've been doing over the last few weeks, or little, respites from tour. It's going to be a big year, right? Like, we're still playing festivals and we got a lot of exciting things. We're welcoming in a new baby into our community. We have 2 different like long sessions of studio stuff and more work to do to kind of like go through it even, right? Yeah. Listen to the takes, identify whether this is even something that like, we want to be, is this definitively the one? Is this, what can be better? Is it another instrument that needs to be here? Is it another line? Is it a drum beat? Do we just need to go in and do it again? These are all the questions that will then kind of be asked. And then the whole like producing the song and mixing the song, whenever it's fucking done. I don't know. There is no timeline. The timeline is we're working on it. And there's a lot of other stuff and balls in the air, but, we're not dropping any of them, and keep on keeping on.
Some tough decisions are going to have to be made because...
Oh, no.
Well, there are at least 15 songs that are in contention for slots on this album. And I mean, maybe it's a triple album, maybe it's Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 or something like that. But
fuck it, man. Maybe it's not, an album at all. Maybe it's just like, okay, this song's done. Enjoy, everybody. Tell your friends, please. Right. And then a couple of weeks later, we finish another one. We're like, cool, this one's done. It's even better. Tell your friends about this one too. And I feel like we could continue to do that for a while if we stay on this path.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, the problems of being so prolific. So you mentioned all of the things that are going on in the Disco Biscuits world, both with respect to the music, with the exciting new arrivals we're all anticipating. Now let's look ahead a little bit to summer.
Okay. Yeah, man.
So there's a cool thing coming emerging from these summer tour announcements that have begun to trickle out. You guys are taking Tractor Beam to some of these big festivals. And that is a very exciting thing because Tractor Beam has become this new way that the band levels up in a single night, whether it's at the Boulder Theater or at the Fox or at Biscoland. Every one of those prior Tractor Beam performances has been
it's where we reach our
a wormhole.
Yeah, we hit like our infinity star, and it lasts for a little bit until we search for our next one. Right. But we have some really big infinity stars coming up this summer. Yeah. Gave me a little bit of anxiety just bringing it up,
Yeah, especially considering that typically for these Tractor Beam shows, you're on the hook to come up with 90 minutes of new music at least.
Well, I think these shows are big shows, and I don't know what they're going to be. I always aim for these things to be, as collective of an effort as possible, with whatever to kind of like inform the beginning of whatever it's then going to become. I think for these shows, we kind of like start working on them now and, not, in the back of the bus.
On the drive to the gig.
On the drive to the gig. No, I think we start kind of working on them now and figure out how we can know that we're going to confidently level up at those shows, I guess. It's so amazing to me to be part of a community of music-minded fans that like love to see the unknowns. Nobody knows what's going to happen, right? But like Tractor Beam is a little bit of a thing where like it can be a little bit more scripted, if you will, than, a typical Disco Biscuit shows. And with that scripting, I think you could lock in a lot of other elements. And that's what I'm kind of curious to explore. I don't know whether it's just a thought experiment, of like, I don't know. What if like Falling 303, and when like I triggered the vocal sample, that like on like the LED screen behind us or the video wall behind us, comes like something perfectly synced to the, lyrics, whether it's a mouth, singing the lyrics to Falling, or whether it's like, a video of a guy that's fucking falling and then something changes right when it hits the chorus. I don't know. Things, right? When you go to like these big festival shows and things are just so fucking dialed in, and there's a certain, I don't know, there's a certain perfection in that like resonates, right? Of like, there's a power in that precision, in the same way that there's a power in the je ne sais quoi of our improvisational, philosophy, right? There's a power in the precision, and when those fucking fire cannons go off like at the precise time, which I know is not a sync thing, it's just a fucking dude and a fucking button hitting it at the downbeat when it's really obvious. It's like, yes, this wind up at the end of it, there's going to be a phrase. It's going to go, you don't know what you're doing, and then that's what you press the button, right when he says you don't know what you're doing, boom. Okay, that's my tangent.
Do I hear that pyro is in our future. That's what I'm thinking.
No more pyro for the Disco Biscuits, I think, actually.
We learned our lesson
pyro.
the hard way in 1999 about that.
I learned our lesson the hard way in 1999, and another hard lesson at Red Rocks when we did pyro. Do you recall that one?
No, that must have been while I was away. What happened?
This is a great story. So, it was one of the triumphant returns to Red Rocks, and we had hired pyro, right? And there's like a guy that comes with pyro that's specially licensed for it. And he has this little Mission Impossible box, and he's got his thing cautioned off with caution tape. Nobody can be around him as he opens up the box with a special key. And, then there's like 2 buttons inside, right? That obviously trigger the fucking pyro. And we wanted to do it at the end of basis, right? Or whatever, the beginning, right there. And something like there was like a fuse that mislit, whatever it was like and then it just kind of like fizzled. It was like so the way that I describe it, and Joey and I laugh about this all the time.
Oh no.
And it's pyro. It comes to the guy, costs a fuck ton of money. So it's just kind of like funny. So no more pyro. Cold Spark. We like Cold Spark. Cold Spark is cool. Yeah.
But I do love the fact that last year during festival season, you guys did I feel like a trial run of what you're describing, which was you crafted those sets very intentionally. They were incredibly tight, Texas Eclipse, Electric Forest.
There's a great example.
Sets did the job that they were intended to do, which was to expose a non-jam crowd or a jam/electronic music crossover crowd to the best of the Disco Biscuits.
That's right.
Very cool.
Yep.
I got one last thing to ask you.
Yeah.
What were you doing 30 years ago today?
Oh man. This is the anniversary of the first time the Grateful Dead played Unbroken Chain live. And I happened to be in the second row of the Philadelphia Spectrum, directly in front of Phil for that very moment. And it was absolutely a magical moment that I almost missed, which I'll get into in one second. But that moment where the first the first 10 seconds of Unbroken Chain, those light, notes that came in kind of fall upon the crowd. And it took everybody 3-4 seconds to kind of be like, is this Unbroken Chain? Is this fucking Unbroken Chain? And that collective realization amongst 18,000 or whatever it is at the Spectrum just like erupted into this cheer that was like it was a different type of cheer. It wasn't excitement, it was like a holy fuck. And everybody realizing it simultaneously, only to collapse it so that we could listen to those beginning soft moments of Unbroken Chain. So earlier in the day, I was not preparing to go to that Grateful Dead concert, even though I had full intentions of going. So they were in town for a 3-night run, and I'd gone to the other ones. This one, however, so here's the quick backstory. I pledged a fucking fraternity in college, right? Did the whole thing where you fucking pledge and all that stuff. Lived in the house my sophomore year, where you would think that would be the year where I could, benefit from the fucking bullshit pledging stuff that happened the year before. But that's the year that the Disco Biscuits started playing music, right? So all of my weekends, I had basically spent going off and playing, Smokey Joe's and Kavanaugh's and all these different fraternity parties, all these other things that we were doing in the early stage of our career. But this one day in 95, we had played I guess we were still pledging at that time. So we had played a prank on the Pledge Masters, right? Where we kidnapped the Pledge Masters. And we brought them back to I don't know, one of our classmates who like, you know, lived out here in like the suburbs of Philly, and, you know, like tied up and like making them do the stupid shit that they would make like us do, right? And pledging like that type of, you know, drink this and that type of stuff. Anyway, we eventually got spooked because we thought that the rest of the fraternity who was looking for the pledge masters, knowing that we had kidnapped them, we had gotten spooked that they had been hip to our location. So we decided to move the captured pledge masters to the Adams Mark Hotel on City Line Avenue here in Philadelphia. Now, the day is ticking forward, right? But it's okay because my concert isn't until nighttime. I still haven't figured out, like, you know, what the next few hours is going to entail, but that's my intention. And we're in like the parking lot of the Adams Mark Hotel. I'm not sure why we were in the parking lot, but like all of a sudden these cars like whip into the parking lot, and it's the fucking fraternity that had figured out where the fucking pledge class, you know, had kidnapped the pledge masters. And it is fucking mayhem, right? It's like the fraternity is like running around trying to tackle the fucking pledges who had kidnapped the pledge masters. And I'm like seeing this all go down, realizing fucking like, what the fuck is this whole thing anyway? Also, I have a Grateful Dead concert to go to tonight, right?
Yeah.
So they're all getting like fucking captured, and I find is fucking 95 a phone booth, and I call my my friend who's fucking like 10 years older than me, and he comes and he picks me up, and we go down to the show, and they were his tickets for second row that night, and that was just like one of those like I'm so happy that I was there to experience that. Show goes on, show's over, getting driven home. I'm starting to like develop some guilt that I left my pledgelings, whatever the fuck we're called, right? And I asked to be dropped off at the fraternity house because I had like, I don't know whether phones were a thing yet, but I feel like I'd got either the guilt or like the where are yous had happened, right? So I go to the house, and the pledge, or my pledge class is like, you know, in the pledge circle thing, right? And like it's not going well. You know, like they had just been caught doing something bad, and all of a sudden Magner fucking walks in, you know, like the only one that like isn't part of the class, right? And or that wasn't in the lineup, the pledge circle. And I take my fucking position in the circle. Pledge Masters comes over and goes, or he says to another pledge, he's like, when was the last time the Grateful Dead, says to the a hippie in our class, when was the last time the Grateful Dead played on Broken Chain Live? It's like, sir, the Dead never played on Broken Chain Live. Malin, when was the last time the Dead played on Broken Chain Live? Sir, the Dead never played on Broken Chain Live. Magner, when was the last time the Dead played on Broken Chain Live? The Dead played on Broken Chain Live tonight for the very first time. And like you hear this like, it's collective, like, you fuck. Yeah. So that's my so thankful that I did not miss out on that show, and decided to say fuck it to the establishment.
Oh my god.
To conforming to establishments.
Wow.
Angelica wants me off the podcast. Now you have to come on the podcast. If you're going to tell me to wrap it up and stand there and continue to wrap it up, now you have to be the special guest.
Hey, Angelica.
You guys been on for like 3 hours.
We'll wrap it up anyways. Avery would like me to come upstairs and make dinner too.
Night, night. Thank you, Max.
See you guys. Take care.